I don't know if you knew, but Eric died last year, you said in that matter-of-fact way that you always have. Eric had been your best friend since childhood, a man that I consistently recall in my writing as a cherub-faced giant with cheerful, innocent qualities that made skinny dipping and trespassing seem like schoolyard fun. He was light in my memory, so the news of his death surprised me. It feels like I lost a piece of me, you continued. There are so many laughs I'll never share again. Heroin is a disgusting beast, and I hate that so many people only saw that part of him. And I said, I hate it too. Because I remember the Eric that you introduced me to in that year that we spent engaged and in over our heads with a million student loans and changing jobs and lofty goals and prying, awkward dinners with your mom. I remember Eric, I told you, as a lover of people, of nature, of life. He was truly an incredible friend to both of us. I wanted to ask you to tell me stories of him, partly because I was hungry to comb the vast depths of your own memories, and partly because it had been over 5 years since I'd heard the low gravel of your voice. I was shocked into thirsting for your familiar sound, but I didn't. I didn't ask for stories then. After all, this isn't about you or me, this is about him. We lost him. But mostly you lost him. I cannot relate to your sadness. There is no lower rung for me to step on in order to probe these chasms alongside you. Grief is an experience unique to each of us. I can only grasp the ends of your pain. I realize I don't really know you anymore. It's been 9 years now since I broke off our engagement and I ran home, a place I learned that will always be there, but never as I left it, never as I expect. In the course of that time, we have each made babies. We've buried babies. We've tasted new tongues and betrayed them. We've worshipped new gods and rebelled against them, but this is not about you and me. This is about him. I want to put together a memory book for Eric's mom, you said in that most recent voicemail, and I called you back to hear more of what you were planning. I want her to understand that he was more than a junkie to us, you know. And I agree. I want to share the Eric that I had cared for. There was a collection of stories I had written from that time in life, and I began to scan through them. I didn't realize how unprepared I was to re-enter the life that you and I had created together. There was this tangible moment when I had closed the door to the path we would have walked together, and I never intended to open it again, but reading these things, I got nostalgic. We had been incredibly toxic and destructive as a couple, yes, but we'd also been magically in sync and creative, completely magnetic to all of the right people that rounded out our world. Eric was one of those who rounded it out. Never before have I met a man who treated me with such instantaneous affection and respect. He was unequivocally supportive of our happiness, and that sentiment continued after our breakup. He would still check in on me. He'd still call to make sure that I had found a better and a softer spot to land. I began to note my own supporting role in the story with the realization that perhaps, after all, Eric had been the magnetic one that had drawn us to himself. Because this isn't about you and me. This is about him. He taught me to throw a hunting knife, you remember? I should tell that story to his mom. You and I had been walking, as we often did, along the banks of the St. Joseph River outside of Fort Wayne, Indiana. It was late spring, and the leaves were exploding on those trees in their fullness. The shade was damp and cool, and we were debating whether or not 1/16 of Cherokee heritage is enough to consider oneself partly Native American. I distinctly remember the sound of whistling coming through a grove of yellow poplars, and suddenly we came across Eric. His freckled face lit up when he saw us, and he joined our walk for a while, stopping us when he realized I had never attempted to throw a knife before. "It's easy," he assured me. "Just visualize your line and listen to the weight of the knife. Just release when the weight tells you to let go." Within minutes, he had me launching a glittering hunting knife like a shooting star and sinking that blade into the center of a rotting stump. I felt powerful and wild and free on that day, certain of my own ability to thrive within nature, more certain than ever of the fact that I belonged in that place in your life. Eric had a way of taking a person's strength and multiplying it. Our doubts became desires. He would read our joy and add to it, or feel our sorrow and find ways to lessen it. He was a man we could each call after we'd had yet another explosive fight, and he would hold our anger and our tears with complete confidence and compassion. His love of others exemplified the kind of empathy and grace that you and I failed time and again to extend to one another. We failed. Shamefully and without remorse. We fucking broke everything beautiful around us, and for too many years we refused to look at the destruction. And now I remember why I sealed this vault. Each time I pick up a shard of these stories, each time I remember our world, the grooves in my brain's memory are sliced again, deeper by the blade. Every memory that I found in my writing brought an onslaught of pain and shame, haunted by the slightest remnants of joy. I was unforgiving and unforgivable. You were uncontrollable and angry. But this isn't about you and me. This is about him. I began to recognize Eric's common thread throughout each of the stories that I had written. Our daily life was so influenced by his affection for us, and I had been blind to it. When I needed a ride home from a late night serving tables, Eric was there to drive me at 1 a.m. When you were drunk and threatening to drive home from a party, Eric was the one to wrestle you for your keys. The times that we each kicked the other out for the night, Eric's couch was our landing pad. His patient and magnificent heart loved us no less for the inconvenience. He wanted to do good, and he wanted us to be good. The thought of such a selfless man falling victim to heroin overdose rends my heart from my chest again and again. He asked nothing of us. We should have been more willing to give. These old stories begin to seep into my dreams, and it makes me want to know you again. I realize how little I knew of your perspective. What did you do when I told you we were over? How many rebounds did I inspire? How many nights had you lain awake, alone in your bed, considering, as I did, where it all went wrong? For years, I asked the purely reflexive questions about how an intangible thing like a heart could become a shattered glass puzzle that cut deeper than a knife when I tried to pick up and examine each piece. How could something so broken still manage to glitteringly reflect all of the ugliest and the worst parts of me? It has taken me almost a decade to determine the depths of my own fault. It is only through unlocking this vault of memory that I've accepted that we were not the only victims of our toxicity. And now that guilt sinks in, like that shining blade in a rotten stump. Maybe the questions that I have asked are all wrong. How many nights did Eric lie in bed, wishing someone would care for him the way that he cared for us? How often did he desire to share secrets and tears with confidence that they would be held and treasured? What would have been different if, for once, just once, I had been the one to patiently listen to his stories? We were wretched to him. I see that now, and the only story to be told is of our failure. We can only imagine his anguish as the addiction laid waste to his life. We can only grasp at the ends of his pain. Why does it take a tragedy for the blindfolds to be removed from our eyes? Because this isn't about you and me. This is about all of us. And I know if Eric were here, he'd have a sliver of wisdom to share. He would give us a quote about peace or song lyrics about the power of reconciliation, but he isn't here. So all I can do with this burden of guilt and regret is understand that moving forward and upward is our only option. And I can take what I learned from him I can visualize a straight line. I can feel the weight. And I can listen when it tells me to let go.